I'm Dr. Jodi Richardson, and you're listening to Well, Hello Anxiety, a podcast where we end the struggle with anxiety and build our toolkit of practical skills to thrive. Hello and welcome back to another episode. We're talking about worry today. This is a huge issue if you have anxiety as part of your life or you care for someone where anxiety is a part of their daily challenge or even just an occasional challenge. Worry can be a really big part of it. And today's episode is with a guest. It's a conversation with a guest who we've had on the podcast before and who you all loved. And Harriet Iles is joining us from Sydney. I'm going to introduce her and welcome her in a moment. But I want you to know that when it comes to worry, I know what that's like. It was a sickening part of my anxiety for decades, and I've been there. I've walked in those shoes. I know what it's like to worry about anything and everything as a, I guess, with a diagnosis of generalised anxiety myself. I know what it's like. I know how hard it is. And so we really want to work hard for you today to help you to understand more about worry and also to know that there are some steps that you can take to help manage it. And Harriet specialises in this area along with perfectionism. And when she joined us previously, we talked about eating disorders, which is another area of interest for her as a professional, as a psychologist. But I wanted to remind you that here at Well, Hello Anxiety, we talk about mental health and anxiety and well-being, and we try to keep things really practical for you so that you walk away with some ideas about what you can do differently to make a difference for you. But anxiety is the world's most common mental health challenge. You are amongst a good company here if that's a challenge for you. But what we also know is that only 1 in 4, these stats coming from the World Health Organization, only around 1 in 4 people receive treatment for their anxiety. And sometimes that's due to barriers, financial barriers, perhaps access to resources, awareness of treatment options and connecting with those. But here at the podcast, you'll learn some ideas, get more understanding and insights. And today in particular, one of the things we will really want to talk about is worry, which excessive worry is obviously one of the symptoms of anxiety. And it can be about separating, it can be about social situations, or it could be more of a generalised anxiety and worry about a whole lot of different things, depending on where you're at with your anxiety and what it is in particular that is a challenge for you. At the heart of so much of worry is intolerance of uncertainty. And gosh, we love certainty. And that's why COVID was so bad for increasing anxiety amongst the population and making it more difficult for those of us with the diagnosis because uncertainty was rife. So it's with great pleasure that I introduce Harriet to you. If you've not heard Harriet previously, then you're going to really like Harriet's approach and the compassion that she brings to the work that she does as a psychologist. And she also works clinically, obviously, with patients. So we'll talk about that towards the end of the episode. In general terms, she works with individuals to support them to manage their anxiety and their mood, to overcome perfectionism and to really help manage other symptoms of anxiety. And when it comes to anxiety, it can be really debilitating. Harriet really likes to make sure that people can really be restored to greater calm so that you can have more control, more of a sense of calm, enjoy life a lot more and have more confidence in yourself and be able to do more in your life that will enrich it for you, in addition to having more mindful moments to really be connected and present with the people that are around you, because worry just takes our thinking way away from where we are in the moment with the people that we care about. So, Harriet, it's really such a joy to have you back. Thank you so much for joining us again today for another great chat about a really difficult part of the anxiety kind of condition.
Thanks so much for having me again, Jodi. It's great to be here and to unpack worry in greater depth.
Yeah, thank you. It's a big challenge, and I won't talk about my own experiences. I have done many times on the podcast, but I just know how debilitating it can be from a personal point of view, and I've seen that in other people that I've spent time with and worked with. And I wonder if you could kind of tell me, what are you seeing in your practice and how big of a challenge is it for people who live with anxiety and perfectionism as well?
So when it comes to worry, I obviously see worry across all areas of my world. So every human does worry. And so it's about learning how to manage our worry and learning the function of worry, why it's there, the function that it serves, the purpose that it serves. And I guess building that toolbox of strategies to relate to our worry a little bit differently and to enable our worry to lead to present moment action. And we'll get into that a little bit more when we talk about like strategies and practical tools and things like that. But I see worry in my professional life. I see worry in my personal life. And worry usually takes the form of, the what ifs, like what if this happened? What if that happened? The worst case scenarios, as well as just sort of warning signs. And the way I see worry is that cognitive symptom of anxiety. So you've got those physical symptoms of anxiety, such as, increasing heart rate, pupils dilating, muscles tense, feeling nauseous. So it sounds a bit like that stress response, like a fight or a flight specific stress response, although there are many other different stress responses too. And then usually when you're in a bit of a stress response, a fight flight, you can often have worries that somewhat accompany those physical symptoms of anxiety. But sometimes they can be separate. So the physical symptoms of anxiety and then the cognitive symptoms of anxiety being those racing thoughts, which often do come in the form of worries. So they occur across all areas.
Oh, thank you. And that really helps anyone listening who worries a lot to feel less alone, and also hopefully a little bit more hopeful that today in this episode alone there will be some more insights and understanding. And I'm interested in something that you just said before. I'm really keen to talk about the function of worry because it does serve a purpose to an extent, but you talked about varying stress responses. Can you share a little bit more about that before we get into the function of worry?
So there are many different stress responses that we can go into as humans. And I guess before I get into what those look like, it's probably best if I just talk about the amygdala quickly.
Great.
And amygdala it's a structure in the brain. It's like an almond shape and it sits at the back. And its job is to basically scan your environment for danger. So historically, if you think about what the amygdala used to do, it was scanning your environment for, say, wild animals out in nature. So the danger was physical threat to life. Years later, our worlds have evolved, but our bodies, our brains haven't. So we're still operating as if we were living thousands of years ago. So the amygdala is still scanning out for danger, but it can't tell the difference between physical danger or psychological danger. So what I mean by physical danger is, yes, the wild animals, could be cars on the road. Psychological danger could be increasing to-do lists. It could be social rejection, could be intense feelings of shame, as another example. So your amygdala is scanning your environment for danger. And when it sees something in your environment that could potentially threaten you physically, psychologically, it will most likely activate some sort of alarm. So think about the amygdala like a fire detector. So when it sees that smoke, it might go off. But sometimes it goes off when there's burnt toast. Sometimes it goes off when there's an actual fire. When it goes off, it's likely going to bring about some sort of stress response. So if we think about, say, like a wild animal in front of us, often we're firstly going to ask ourselves, well, can we fight this thing? And if we don't think we've got the resources and the ability to fight it, so that's when we go into that fight response, we will likely go, okay, well, let's run away. So that's where the flight comes in. So fight and flight response are those responses where you might feel, as we alluded to earlier, that increased heart rate, muscles tense. You might start to feel really nauseous, really hot, sweaty. You just want to fight something or you want to run away. Usually emotions such as frustration, anger, anxiety, that cognitive process of worry can come about when our system is so kind of hyper vigilant. We also talk about 3 other stress responses. There's the freeze response. So if I take it back to the tiger example, if we realize we can't fight the tiger, we can't run away from it. Let's just say the tiger's seen us. We might go into that sort of freeze response of what do we do next?
Yeah.
And in the present day, that freeze response could manifest, say, if we've got a task and we don't really know what to do, and it's like, do I start the task? Do I not? Do I start? Do I not? Do I send that message? Do I not? So it's this sort of thought process accompanied by this sort of energy, but energy that's somewhat stuck.
Yes.
So you're sort of stuck. And we call that the freeze response. Then there's also the flop response. So the flop response, and I'll take it back to the tiger example again. We can't fight the tiger. We can't run away. We freeze and then we go, well, let's just sort of flop to the floor and just kind of hide. So that flop response, now we're looking at kind of immobilization. So we still detect like fear in the environment, but we're not mobilized. We're almost pretty much immobilized.
Yes.
And that can actually look like symptoms of depression. So feeling really helpless, feeling numb, sort of shut down almost because the reality of the situation is quite stressful. And that is a way of protecting us to somewhat flop and disconnect from our reality. So that's the flop. And then we've got a final one that we talk about too in psychology, which is the fawn response. So the fawn response is one whereby it might sound and look a little bit like people pleasing.
Yeah.
Say someone says something to us like, you need to do this, otherwise that could happen. And you just go, yes.
Yes. Yes.
So it's a response whereby we fear something happening if we don't do something, most likely. And so that's why we say, yes, we will do it to mitigate risk.
Yes. I am so glad that we started here because it is a really important conversation to have about the different ways that we respond in the face or react, really. It's not a choice, is it, really, the way we are reacting in the face of stress. And I've been in a very, and I wrote about this a lot in Anxious Mums, I was in a very threatening situation and I went into freeze. And my body reacted for months afterwards because I had an incomplete kind of fight or flight. Because of the fact that I froze, I became very depressed. I rang my psychologist and said, this is what's happening. I'm going downhill with depression. Really, anxiety's been the huge part of my life. Major clinical depression was kind of what sent me to get help and ultimately learn that you've had an anxiety disorder that's been untreated for 25 years. When I was returning into that depression, starting to go back into that real slump, he's like, kind of like, right, what happened? What's going on? Tell me about this. Let's go right back. When did this begin? And we were ultimately, through therapy, able to kind of work through that. But I had numbness and tingling in my arms and legs. I had nerve conduction testing as a result because nobody could understand why I felt the way I did. But I had frozen in a threatening situation and needed to kind of really process, obviously, what I'd been through. And the fawn response, I imagine there's a lot of people like me, and I'm familiar with the fawn response, of course, but just this people pleasing, I think when we're anxious, we like you say, mitigating risk, reducing threat. And that threat could be social exclusion. It could be not being liked as much, this need to be liked. And this people pleasing is a huge part of the life for many people I know with anxiety, and has been in the past for me. And I've really overcoming, I think, wisdom at age, lots of therapy and other strategies have helped a lot. But I appreciate you taking the time to talk us through this, because it's really just this raised awareness, and the understanding can help people not only in future situations, but also reflect on past situations and learn more about themselves, which is what I love about our time together. So thanks, Harriet. I appreciate that. That was a little bit off kind of topic, but also extremely important and relevant because, as you said, when it comes to anxiety, there are all the physical symptoms and the cognitive symptoms, the what ifs, the catastrophic thinking. And worry is a really significant part of the experience for so many. What is the function of worry? How would you describe that for listeners? Because it's so debilitating and difficult and can just take away from life in ways that are hard to describe, and help people who haven't lived through that to understand just how much it can detract from daily life and quality of life. So what purpose does it serve? What's the function of it?
Worry's all about protection. It's our body and brain trying to help us to get prepared. So worry is very future orientated. Now, what I mean by future is it could be an hour from now, it could be 2 hours, it could be 10 years, it could be 1 year, right? It's still the future. So worry takes us out of the present and into the future, giving us ideas of things that could potentially happen. And whilst it feels really frustrating and annoying, and it can very much keep us stuck and in a different time zone and not in the present, it's designed to prepare and help us. However, as I said before, when worry is keeping us stuck and keeping us in different time zones, that's obviously going to impair our ability to take advantage of the present, to live in the now. We do need to learn how to relate to our worries differently and to thank our mind. But then we need to be able to bring our attention back into the now and to decide what we're going to do with these worries.
And it's interesting that you said it's all about the future, because anything up until now is the past officially, of course. We know that to be true. And so even if you are reflecting on something that has happened, the worry really is about what that could mean in the future. I often sort of think about, gosh, I've sent a text message to someone and they haven't replied to me, and this doesn't happen often, but sometimes I sort of think, I tell myself, right, this person takes a long time to reply. This is a pattern. There's no issue here. I haven't asked something that's too much, or I haven't upset this person. This is the mind. My mind used to be so much about how have I wronged people, where I don't really ever wrong people, but I would always worry that somehow I was responsible for them being upset, especially when I was a teenager with friends. If friends were upset or something was going on, I would feel as though I was somehow responsible for it, and it was my job to kind of fix it and patch it up and make it better. And it was just, oh my gosh, exhausting. So exhausting. So yeah, even if we're worried about something, like a young person might be worried about Snapchat, for example. Oh, that person has opened my Snap but hasn't replied, which is a big deal to some teenagers, this communication of the modern age. And worrying, even though that's happened in the past, they're worried about what it might mean for the future.
Yeah, exactly. So I do get that question a lot, actually, when people are, say, thinking about something that happened in the past, say at a social event, and they're worried about how someone interpreted something that they may have said. I mean, at the root of that is social anxiety, fear of negative evaluation from other people.
Yeah.
And that fear is rooted in the need to survive, because as we used to live thousands of years ago, we lived in tribes, and having our people, having our tribes enhanced our survival prospects.
Exactly. Rejection could mean death. Once upon a time it did. And that was the thing. People were excluded and rejected, and it's a huge fear, and it's a very innate kind of mechanism within us that wants to protect ourselves from that. Hence the worry about, like you say, social anxiety and negative evaluations. And whilst in the moment it feels like it's about the thing we said or didn't say or did or didn't do, but it's much bigger than that.
Yeah, definitely. But a lot of the worries, well, the thoughts about, say, the past, that technically, yes, they are about the past, but we're worrying about what someone may do and think about us in the future.
Yeah. Yeah, you really cleared that up. So, Harriet, a simple question for you. Maybe it's simple in asking, not in the answering, but let's see. What is worry?
So worry, as we've identified before, it is that future-oriented thinking that sounds like, what if this happens? What if that happens? What if they say that? What if I get this illness? What if this happens? It can sound like all the worst case scenarios in a situation. The worst case is that happening. That is the worst case. This also could happen, but that's not the worst case. That's the worst case. So we're going to attend more so to that because our body and brains would want us to be more prepared for the worst case than say the best case.
Yes.
And then it could just be a warning, like, just look out for that. That could happen. But again, that could. The what if, the worst case. So anything that's about something in the future that is bringing about some of those, say, physical anxiety symptoms that we spoke about earlier, that increased heart rate, feeling anxious or frustrated or panicked or very fearful. So often you're going to get the physical symptoms with the thought processes. That's most likely to be a worry.
Yeah. Yesterday, I took my daughter to, actually the whole family, we went along to the singing concert she has vocal training throughout the year, and they give them multiple options or multiple opportunities, I should say, to perform. So it's really kind of, not only you're learning how to sing and use your voice, but you're getting opportunities to sing in front of an audience, which takes so much courage. I mean, it's one thing, somebody said once upon a time, we all thought public speaking was the hardest thing. No, public singing probably tops it off. And I think about this in terms of the worry and the outcome, which is I'm going to forget the words. I'm not going to hit the notes I want to hit. I'm not going to be able to keep my hands still because I'm a fiddler, because I'm nervous when I'm in front of the audience, or I'm not going to perform as well as I want to do. And so, yeah, when you're talking about the physical symptoms come because the body is preparing to stay safe and to be able to be powered appropriately to be able to fight or flee as is needed. But yeah, the worry comes with that. And yeah, you just got me thinking about, I sat in that audience yesterday for 2.5 hours listening to everyone perform and just thought there was so much anxiety and worry leading up to these performances. And all of a sudden these people have stood in front of the audience, sung their song, and it's all over, and then it settles down. It can be really productive in some ways, can't it? It can be very unproductive in others. Can you help us make sense of the worry that is productive versus unproductive? Because we can't dismiss all worry as being a problem, can we?
No, and it's firstly just important to be able to see your thoughts, and worry is a type of thought, as separate from you. So thoughts, we have thousands and thousands and thousands of thoughts each and every day, and thoughts are not fact. They're not necessarily the truth. So firstly, being able to just go, okay, that is a thought I'm having, and that is some sort of worry. And the first step's probably labeling it a worry. And then the second step, trying to really identify, can this worry lead to present moment action? So for example, I might be worried about failing a maths test. That worry could, in a way, lead to me planning out my revision, attending my lectures, doing my study to reduce the likelihood of failure and increase the likelihood of a higher mark. So there are some actions that I can take in the present. And so if that was my worry, I'd go, thank you, mind. I don't want to fail. And so I'm going to turn this worry into problem solving and planning. However, this is the little catch that I think is really important to reiterate. In life, there's always going to be an element of uncertainty. And so in me doing the planning and preparation, I still don't have full control over the precise mark. So whether the worry is productive or unproductive, whether we're able to take action in the present or we're not, there's still uncertainty. We need to learn how to tolerate and accept what is in versus out of our control. So just coming back to the productive worry, can this worry lead to present moment action? If it can, then I'd be like, okay, I'm going to use that worry and I'm going to turn it into actionable steps in the present. And then I've got to also probably just move through my anxiety and engage in some prepare because there's likely to be some physical symptoms of anxiety that accompany the worry.
Yes.
Now, if the worry is just these very abstract, what if this happens in 20 years' time? Or the likelihood of that worry coming true is just what's so high, then perhaps that worry, we can label that unproductive because all it's doing is taking us out of the beauty of the present moment and getting us thinking about things where there's no real actionable steps in the present. So like, do I just sit here and like waste the present whilst, operating in a different time zone? Probably not. So that's when we need to do a lot of self-soothing, relinquish control, accept uncertainty, let it go, and tell yourself, there's nothing I can specifically do in the present. I'm going to need to practice moving through that anxiety, engaging in self-care, accepting uncertainty, and letting go of what I can't control.
The F word is something I talk about when I'm speaking to groups, and not the F word that would particularly come to mind when I say that, but it's about focus on what you can control, and this idea that often that alone can make a really powerful difference because it's our attention, isn't it? Like when our attention is future focused, and like you say, it could be a health concern. It could be that you're going for your regular mammogram as a woman, or you're having a skin check, or a family member's not well, and we don't know what's going to happen. And we know, don't we? We know that naturally no amount of worry is going to change anything unless it's productive in the sense that, like you say, we can do something in the moment, like the maths example that you shared. You can plan and prepare in the moment. That's a way to take that worry into a productive kind of action versus something that's future focused, that is so far out of our control and so far in the future that it's dragging our attention away from what we could be doing in the moment. But as much as it makes sense, it's quite hard to unhook, isn't it? To let go. These thoughts can just become so consuming and so sticky. And so I'd really love to talk to you now about what are some practical ideas for in the moment kind of strategies, focusing on what you can control. I find that really useful. It just helps me to unhook, bring my attention back into the moment and do what I can do in the moment, regardless of whether it's associated with the worry or not, but focus probably back on what I was doing before the worry crept in. What are some of the practical ways that we can support people today together to manage better and also direct people to get some extra help if they need it?
Totally. I think it really comes down to strategies that will help you to create that healthy separation from you and your thoughts. So that could be through talking the thought out to someone, talking the worry out to someone, and them and you creating a bit of an action plan as to what you can do in the present. It could look like writing the worries down onto a piece of paper or in a journal. So there's a lot of talk in the psychology discourse around journaling at the moment as a way to bring your attention back to the moment, connect to your emotions and connect to your thoughts. And when you've got things written down, it can help you to create that separation from those emotions and from those thoughts. And then you can decide how you want to, say, move through that emotion, how you want to manage that thought, if that makes sense. So writing things down, talking it out with other people, creating that action plan, which writing things out and talking to people can definitely lead to. I alluded to earlier as well, with worry often comes those anxious feelings, potential fear, potential panic. And so it's likely that we're going to feel a little bit dysregulated in our nervous systems. So that's where strategies that help you to ground in the present moment can be helpful, such as mindful movement. So walking, stretching. It could look like self-soothing through your five senses. So we've got five senses: what we see, hear, touch, taste, smell. So connecting to the present moment, using those senses, because when we are getting cues of safety from the present moment, that's going to send messages to our amygdala that, hang on, we're actually okay. So that could be listening to your favorite music, going to your favorite place, like a beach or a spot in nature. Could look like deep breathing or looking at specific imagery or talking to people that you feel safe and that you really trust, or like grabbing onto like a stress ball. Like if you're in the office, have images, have your AirPods, have sensory toys. Like I talk a lot about having little sensory toys on your table if that's something that helps to ground you and bring you back into the now.
Yes.
Because that's where your power is. It's in the now.
With the sensory toys and the fidgets and the like that are available, for adults are probably listening, will probably be aware of these as items that are often used by younger people, by teenagers and the like, but they're equally available and powerful for us. I talk a lot about the sense of smell, and one of the things that grounds me beautifully is having a delightful hand cream that I can use to ground myself. So if I'm about to record a podcast, about to go on an important meeting, or to have a conversation with someone that's stressful, I just have the cream with me, and it's a mindful grounding moment where I can use my sense of smell and touch to settle my nervous system and combine that with my breathing. For the fidget toys, there are so many. There are countless different types. How would you encourage, no matter what type of sensory item a person is using, how would you teach somebody to use it to maximise the value of that as an adult sitting at a desk, or a teacher in a classroom who needs to kind of keep regrounding themselves? What advice would you give to an adult into how to use their attention and how to maximise the use of the sensory items, so that anybody listening who has a drawer full at home, perhaps because you've got a teenager or a child who moves through them, because I know a lot of parents have children who will have one and then they're sort of over it in a week and want something new. What are the instructions or the advice that you would share for an adult?
Yeah, it's a good question. There's so many different things out there. So there's Play-Doh, slime. There's so much out there. And whilst a lot of them are targeted to tweens and children, I think adults can get a lot of use out of them because they're playful, they're rhythmic. You can use your hands just to help you to connect to that sensory toy. And I guess in terms of the actual use of them, to redirect your attention back into the present, back to what that Play-Doh feels like, and just through also that movement, having something that's rhythmic, that's consistent, can actually be really soothing and help us to as well regulate our emotions in the present. So for example, with like a child, we've got a rocking chair. That's a very common thing that people can sit on when they've got a screaming baby that needs to learn how to regulate those emotions. So anything that's going to provide that kind of consistent movement, whether it's to a child or to an adult, I think could be beneficial for them, just to bring their attention back into the now and to really connect with what that feels like.
Yes. And it's about finding what is a good fit, isn't it? In that some people really love music. Music helps them to bring their attention back. Other people love, like you say, the squishiness of Play-Doh or slime. My goodness, the amount of slime that has been created in my home over the years. Oh my goodness. And our daughter used to make it all the time, Harriet, and some of them felt absolutely delightful. Some of them felt disgusting. And it's really just finding, isn't it? But even if it doesn't feel good, it's bringing your attention back into the moment, but not in a very soothing way. I like to talk about the attention as a spotlight. The spotlight is shining in the future because of the worry. What can we use in our environment, whether it's a Play-Doh or a slime or an image or music or a scent, to return that attention back to the present. Some people might say, oh, I've tried X, Y, and Z and it doesn't work for me. What would you say to someone who's tried X, Y, and Z and sort of have said, look, that doesn't help me? What are the experiences with your clients in terms of kind of trying to find the right fit for really grounding options to help kind of refocus attention in the moment?
It's a good question. If people say that doesn't work for them, I'd first want to understand what it was about that that may not have worked. I'd want to know how many times they've done it. Because to get benefit, to see change, it's small steps done consistently over lengthy periods of time. The magic is through the process. And so, yes, look, some people may not connect to certain objects or images or may not even like music. And so it's like, well, if you don't like music, then perhaps we figure something else out in terms of a strategy for you. So look, we do want to look at their preferences. You know, what have they historically really enjoyed? Is something to consider. What have they disconnected from? So let's just say they really loved clay as a teen. And, you know, they're now an adult and they don't play with clay as much. Well, you know, perhaps we could reconnect them to that if they're willing to have a go. So having a look at what they've enjoyed previously, have a look at what they enjoy now. If they love music, they play music, they love music, then obviously the self-soothing through music may help them. But if something doesn't work for them, I'd really want to understand how many times they've done it. What does working for them actually mean?
Yes.
Because this isn't about getting rid of the anxiety. It's about effectively kind of moving through it. So you might feel quite anxious as you are playing with that fidget toy or listening to that music. But we obviously we are completing the stress response, as you say. We're moving through that energy. So I would want to know, I guess, what it works means to them as well.
Yeah, great ways to guide some more exploration for people, because like you said, which is so important, is that we're not trying to switch it off. We can't. It's an instinctive physiological response within our brain and body. We cannot rid ourselves of this. It's not a switch that we can just flick off. Even those of us, well, I say us, I have a diagnosis, but those people that don't have a diagnosis but have normal everyday anxiety, somebody nearly hits you on the road when you're driving in your vehicle and a car, you know, is so close to hitting you and you avoid an accident. We have this stress response activated. It doesn't, immediately as you know you're safe and you've averted the accident, it doesn't settle down in an instant. It takes time. And so what you said about moving through, I think, is really important. And one thing that you mentioned earlier was about this separation between us and what we're thinking. And you shared a diffusion strategy about thanking the mind. And I'd like you to extend a little bit for listeners, just as we draw our conversation to a close today, just a little bit more about this idea of separating and being able to almost be able to observe what we're thinking. I wonder if you have a couple of comments that you'd like to share for people who want to learn to use this idea of saying thank you mind, and we can give our minds a name if we want to, and how this separation helps us to kind of be able to look at what's happening and be able to then make more informed choices about what to do next when it comes to worry.
It's hard to believe if you've believed that your thoughts are fact and are the truth for your whole life. It's hard to believe that the thoughts that we have are not necessarily fact. And something I often say to people is, do not think about a blue elephant coming in the door. And they think about a blue elephant coming in the door because when you say don't do something, we usually do it when it comes to our thoughts. And I'm like, well, you thought that, but you obviously know that a blue elephant cannot come in the door. Our minds, and particularly those that are prone to higher anxiety levels, our minds are so creative. We can think so many different things. We can fantasize so much about all these different things that may or may not happen, right? And so in a way, like, that's an amazing thing. To be creative is to think and create things in your head that are not real. So if you're not going to, I guess, believe all the different kind of maybe fantasies that you have, why are we believing all of our worries? So I guess you got to just sit with that. Thoughts are not fact. Now, for you or I, we've known that for a long time. So I have all these different thoughts and I'm just like, haha, that's funny. You know, like I'm so used to it now. Like nothing that I think is reality. Reality is literally what's in front of me. Process is just like naming your thoughts and going, oh, that's one of those worries that's rooted in that story, or that's one of those worries that's related to that emotion, or that's just one of those worries.
Yes. And the idea of the story, because there are a lot of stories. Our minds are great storytellers, as we know, and there can be stories about weight and health and potential and confidence and of course, not to dismiss at all that people arrive at the stories. We arrive at the stories in our mind because of our experiences, and some of those experiences are very, very tough, traumatic, difficult times in our life. Absolutely, we know this to be true, but what you just said about our reality is what is in front of us. And a person might be sitting listening and thinking, right, 2025, I've got the year unfolding. I've got this really great idea. I want it, but nothing I do ever, works out. There's the old nothing I do ever works out story. Sometimes if we can just take a little step back and see it for what it is, that there might be some examples in your history where things haven't worked out. I bet you there's a whole lot of examples where they have. We tend to focus on what doesn't go well sometimes, but just being able to notice and name that story can give us a reprieve, can give us a little bit of space, and that space enables us to be less affected by it, but also have more control over what we might do next, which is focus on what's in our control and do what's in front of us, which when you said before about nothing that you think is reality, you know that your reality is right in front of you. And some of what you think is absolutely true and some of what you think isn't. Same for all of us. One of the things that I often ask myself is it helpful? And that's something I've taught my 2 teenagers to ask themselves often. They might voice what's happening. They can thank their mind. I'm teaching them these skills over time. And then we can say, is it helpful? Well, no, it might be true. Yes, it absolutely might be true. Is it helpful? Well, what could I do that is helpful in this moment? Harriet, did you have any last comments that you'd like to share before you please let our listeners know where they can connect with your work? You've got a beautiful new private practice, restorative space, and I'm really excited for you to share that with our audience. Any kind of final comments before we talk about where people can connect and follow your work?
Yeah, with worry, just like normalizing worry, that worry is something that, we all experience. You're not alone in that. It's learning how to relate to our worries differently and just say, thank you, mind. That's a worry story. You're trying to keep me safe in giving me all of these things that could potentially happen. I need to create that separation from the worry and decide what I'm going to do in the present moment to support myself, to serve myself moving forward.
Thank you. Really well said. Harriet, no doubt there are listeners who are thinking, I might need a little bit of extra help with this. And I know that you are based in Sydney on the east coast of Australia, but you do telehealth, don't you? Can you tell us a little bit about your work, about restorative space, what you're specialising in, and how people can connect with you to either follow your work or to inquire about working with you in 2025?
Amazing. So I have an Instagram. This is my professional Instagram, which is Restorative Space Psychology. So my name's Harriet Iles, and I promote myself as a therapist that works with anxiety and perfectionism. Also, worry comes into that as well. So I am accepting new clients into 2025, and that's an online business. So it's an online private practice. So I see clients via telehealth, and I do have I can see clients under a mental health care plan as well.
Yes.
There's a website too, and you can go to the Instagram and there'll be a link to the website, or you can just type in Restorative Space Psychology and my full name, and you should find that website as well online. So Instagram, website, and that will also have, my email too. So you can email me if you would like to make an inquiry, or if you just have any questions. In terms of the Instagram, I don't answer DMs on the Instagram. If you want to ask me a question, it will have to be through the email.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And all of those details will be in the show notes, which you can find wherever you are listening to this episode right now on your preferred podcasting platform. Harriet, thank you so much for your time. I'm always so grateful for you and for sharing your wisdom and your expertise with us here. You have a really beautiful way of explaining concepts and ideas, and I really appreciate the way that you prioritize this understanding as a really nice foundation for people to kind of know what's happening, recognize kind of what the challenges are when we've talked about worry today, understand the stress response, what's the function of worry, what's productive, what's unproductive, and some really great practical strategies as to what to do about it. So you've shared a lot with us, and I'm very grateful. So thank you again for joining me as a guest.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. And thank you for listening. Gosh, I took so many notes. I'm going to be sharing some posts about this podcast episode and really trying to capture some of the ideas that Harriet's shared with us today so that you'll find those on Instagram and on LinkedIn, and we can keep the conversation going over there. Thank you again for your time, and I'll be back with another guest next week. Okay, bye. Thank you so much for joining me for this week's episode. If you enjoyed it, please subscribe and leave a review. To keep the conversation going, I'd love you to join me over on Instagram. You'll find me at Dr. Jodi Richardson. Also, if you'd like a copy of my free 5-day mini email course, Calm Your Anxious Brain, then jump over to my website, drjodirichardson.com, and you can sign up down the bottom. I've really enjoyed having your company. Thanks so much. See you next time.